Hello everyone and welcome back to the returning Let's Talk Trackmania. We are back with the same format but with some slightly more beautiful faces here. I am your new host, Paul Scottie Gillies. I am joined here by Eirik Holdal, once again a stalwart participant of our previous episodes and also returning and hopefully going to be sticking with us for the foreseeable future. We have Mr. Kai Turbo. Ludwig, thank you very much for joining me, guys. I hope you're ready and willing to go on with our next episode, which is going to be concerning, of course, the new game, as we have taken a little bit of a break following a short restructure, as unfortunately Thomas Mengozi, otherwise known as Geek, has decided to move on to other projects. So first of all, I'm sure you guys would join me in giving a big thank you to Geek for his contribution to the earlier episodes. We certainly couldn't have done it without him, and we wish him all the best going forward. And also a big thanks to Erwin Weber, who's stepped up as the producer of these episodes and also allowing us to facilitate a partnership with ESAC going forward, which we'd certainly hope can prove great going forward for both our parties. But guys, new Trackmania is out. We're here today. We're here to talk about what's our impressions of the new game, all the competitions that have been happening recently and everything. But I mean, first of all, how are you guys doing?
Decent. Could be better. Could be worse. Decent.
Yeah. Hello. At first, I'm doing good. And what? I'm doing good, man. What about you, Paul?
I'm fantastic. I mean, I'm back on the podcast with you guys. I can't complain. You guys enjoying the new game so far?
You're asking a guy who doesn't play the game. I just want to state it that since July 1st, I have not played a single minute in the new Trackmania. But luckily, I actually tried the game before it was out, simply because Nadeo wanted me to try it. And then I think they thought it was better for me to play it and then ask Gillies questions. In the end, I could probably ask the same questions without it, but the gameplay-wise, I enjoy it, but I'm not the player, so I'm afraid if I start playing Trackmania again, I might spend too many hours, and then eventually the job I'm supposed to do in Trackmania gets less and less, so I try to stick away from it, because already after the 4 hours I played before it was out, I got somewhat semi-addicted, but I'm enjoying it from the sidelines.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I mean, I've played a little bit more than that. Maybe like 4 hours a day. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this game, and it really got me addicted. So it got me that old feeling again, where you like play nations, you have fun, you really discover new things with the new blocks and also the new style of the game, and also the ice. Yeah, this is like the biggest part, and also a part that we all have to figure out eventually.
For sure. And I mean, that was kind of the first topic we want to bring up on our return to Let's Talk Trackmania, was the first impressions kind of going into the new game, as, of course, in these opening weeks, it is fresh to everyone. I mean, with exception of a very limited pool of beta testers, alpha testers and things like that. But it is fresh to pretty much everyone. It may be a format that, of course, people recognise. It's a recognisable environment and things like that. But yeah, want to kind of give our view and use this platform to kind of talk about what we've found out after the first few weeks, both in our impressions as how the game's developed for us, how we've enjoyed playing it, for the likes of myself and Turbo, and how the kind of communities viewed the game and how it's developed over the last few weeks with its numerous updates, which are constantly coming out, and with a few, shall we say, superficial changes and a few changes which go a little bit deeper. But if I recall correctly, Eirik, you done a project pretty early on after the game came out. We interviewed quite a number of people on your YouTube about what their impressions were. So, I mean, what's the kind of community feeling about this so far, would you think?
You remember? I mean, you were one of the players I actually talked to.
That's
I've
true,
spoken
yeah.
with, I think it's 16 players just on that YouTube live, simply because I found it exhausting myself to go into each and every stream to ask, let's say, ask Masa on his stream, what do you think about the game? And then go to spam, what do you think about the game? And eventually the streamers then in the end gets exhausted by simply answering the same question. So I thought YouTube live, perfect chance to give the audience a chance to recap what is happening. And if anybody hasn't watched that yet, what is your excuse? But I can sum it up. That I think Kappa, if you want to go into Kappa's interview, I think he maybe summed it up the best. He said that the gameplay feels awesome. He thinks that this is, if you just look at the gameplay itself, it feels good, and that is what the esport players think about. That is what they're gonna care about. How does it feel? How are they able to compete in it? But also, he brought up the question about it feels somewhat half finished because not everything is where it's supposed to be. It's hard to figure out where you're supposed to go. So if you're like maybe a new player that want to discover everything and not only what to say, find a map pack and then hunt it for 10 hours and then eventually went into the next map pack is out, but maybe want to go to online servers, maybe want to build maps, maybe want to create a club, then they feel like maybe it's hard to figure out where you're supposed to go. So sort of the interface is maybe one of the, or the UEI is one of the bad parts about this game so far, but the gameplay and the thing I think is most important is how this game feel, and I haven't heard anything bad about the gameplay yet, and that is positive once you talk to just the competitive players, because that's what I enjoy personally. If they quit, I have no job in Trackmania anymore, so I'm happy from hearing what they think about this new game.
Yeah, so should I continue?
Yeah.
I mean, so the game for me also feels very, very good. I mean, as a player who has a lot of hours in this game, it feels very good. And I also had people like coming into my stream and they were rather new to this game. And I think most of them actually started with a training campaign when they bought the game, because I think the training campaign is not available when you have the standard version, if I recall that correctly. Maybe you guys
starter
can.
version, you mean?
Yeah, the starter version. Is the training there available or not?
I believe it is available, yeah.
Okay.
It must be.
Yeah, I think it must be. But most of the people really got like, got addicted to this game because it's like you want to beat your time, like the Trackmania spirit. And a lot of people had fun doing that. And for me, I think actually the same, that the game is unfinished. And we also had a lot of bugs at this prior weekend at the Zerator Cup, where people had no blocks, and all of a sudden I had a massive lag spike and you couldn't join the server. So there are still some issues that we have to like face, or maybe we have to solve them. But I mean, the game has just been out for 3 weeks, so I think that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with the kind of general sentiment, and it was something I spoke about. I do actually remember now when I was on the YouTube live with Eirik there, but it does seem the kind of general sentiment that the game is unfinished, especially when it comes to the things like the UI issues and the way I either saw it packaged or said myself. My memory's terrible these days. Is it's like a very pretty package with a little bit of an empty inside to it. It looks good, it's kind of flashy in a way, and it feels good when you're actually playing the game, as Turbo was mentioning there. I've got no complaints. I mean, I feel as primarily a tech player that it's much more enjoyable to play. I don't have to worry. I mean, I've not had bugs yet, and that's such a strange feeling, being a tech player used to kind of pushing the limits and things like that. So that's very refreshing for me, and especially through the early stages, it was a bit weird to just be putting so much hours into Trackmania, and it wasn't for a tournament, or it wasn't because I'm specifically hunting someone. It was just that I was enjoying it. I was having fun, and from a lot of the kind of people I've spoken to, it's been that one thing that's been missing for them for such a long time, which this new game's kind of brought back a little bit, which is the fun aspect of it, is just enjoying Trackmania for it being Trackmania again, which I think has been really good. But also, I mean, it might just be because it's fresh. Of course, people are going to try it for what it is instead of, coming back to play it seriously. But in terms of the why we say it's not finished, because I know both of you have mentioned that through either coming from other people who have spoken about it or kind of direct experience in it. I mean, is this something you guys kind of expected going into this, that we would see a game which would have some, shall we say, more minor issues, and some that, I mean, fundamentally kind of shouldn't be there in a sense? Is that something you guys kind of saw coming?
I mean, yes, I saw some minor issues coming up, but maybe more so if this game was released when it was scheduled to be released. We don't have to forget that this game was supposed to be out May 5th, not July 1st. So between May 5th and July 1st, they actually had a lot of time to work on stuff. So maybe I expected less stuff to be problematic simply because now they have longer time to actually work on it. But of course, it's a new game. Then there are going to be some, I don't know, bugs, some stuff they add. There's going to be updates afterwards. So I don't necessarily think that maybe the bugs are the main issues. Maybe it's just how they designed the different parts you're gonna find out about. And actually wanted to bring out how the servers in game work. I asked people on Twitter after the Serati Cup was over, or I think it was after day one was over, what impressed you the most. One guy replied the servers, and that eventually that reply got more likes than my tweet, and that is something I'm mad about. But that just gives an understatement to that they actually.
Oh, and that's the first disconnect from Eirik there. So, I mean, I guess he'll clarify when he gets back, but I believe he was referencing issues with the servers being as sarcasm, if I'm correct in saying, Eirik.
Hello.
Is he back?
I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Something I'm not happy about is the Discord. I don't know, Discord update.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe I expected more problems from the service itself because Serati is the most players. I think it had just under 3,000 players actually showing up. We had 5,000 people signing up. But if the game survives that test and if the servers are going to be used for other events, I think the server side of Trackmania should be at least promising. So maybe I expected a little bit less problems, but I'm not too bad about the sort of bugs and issues there. But I'm not a player myself, so maybe I forgot about most of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, being on the, I personally didn't get to play Zerator Cup as I was working up until the start of it, unfortunately. But so, I unfortunately didn't get to play and kind of experience how the cup was to be run smoothly and things like that. I'll mostly kind of course, take your guys' directive on that. But I mean, I kind of expected that there would be quite a lot of teething issues because, I mean, Nadal does have the reputation of having, issues with the game that do in some cases go unresolved. I think what more my expectation was for there to be more change. Whereas when you're looking through the game into the little menus and things like that and into the little parts of, if you dig a little bit deeper, if we just use that kind of analogy a little bit there, but it seems to be there's a lot of stuff left over from the old projects. So we're talking things like Turbo, we're talking Shootmania, we're talking Trackmania 2 Stadium. Like, it seems there's little things that have been left over here which either shouldn't have been, or it's just in a case that it's not new, which I wasn't expecting everything to be fresh kind of going into this. But on to what you were saying there about the servers. I mean, I personally played a kind of ALM Cup. ALM Cup, which is a tech tournament, which was just run over the next few weekends here. And one of the biggest complaints, actually, on the other edge of the sword from what you were saying, Eirik, was the servers, actually. People were attempting to host matches through their club rooms and through their dedicated servers, which they've set up through third-party providers. And it seems there was a lot of difficulty in actually making the club servers private, yet still allowing, just your general tech player from standard access to join. And I believe it was Runtime were complaining that a specific I believe it was someone by the nickname of Baguette something, kept joining their matches mid-match while they were trying to play and driving on the track because there was no way to secure the club server. We personally, when I was playing a match against Team UK, had a bug where two sets of players would click on the same link for a server and they would get split in half and put to different servers, like clones of the same server, which was really kind of bizarre. But I've heard kind of niggling issues here through the server side of things. So it seems to be they've got a handle on it for your large-term projects. So that's things like your TMGL, your Zerator Cup, which is important because if you're having, as you're saying, there 3,000 people playing this game, the last thing you want them to be seeing is a broken product. So, I mean, I'm not really happy with like the rest of the community seeing something that isn't really working at the moment. But it looks as if they know how to fix it if they've got it working for other events. So, as long as they keep up the kind of update schedule that they have been doing for the past weeks, then I think hopefully the signs should be a bit more encouraging.
So, I mean, I'm asking myself what game comes out without any flaws. Of course, before I was starting the Zerator Cup, like before that night, I was asking myself, what will go wrong tomorrow, because I know for sure, I knew for sure that this will have some issues, and I had this issue with the lag. But I mean, those are things you can really work on, and I think that this has really shown us the like maximum where Trackmania can go when 3,000 people try to play on 30 servers or so that were hosted by someone. And I think that they really got some data or some like reviews from players, and this does not work out, and they can work on it. Because I would say that this is like Trackmania now is a long-term project concerning the subscription model and everything. But everything, I mean, the majority worked out good. I mean, if we take Mania Planet 4 into consideration with the 24-hour race and the Game World Duo Cup, that was very terrible compared to what's this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree with you. The only thing that I would kind of put as a point to that is that I'm interested to see how cups like that test the new game. I mean, there's been virtually no competitions outside of Trackmania Grand League, and a few matches recently that were run on Pittsburgh Knights all-round circuit that are utilising the lap script, which a lot of people complained about. And I'll be interested to see if the DDE staff managed to get a sort of 24-hour race or endurance race running and managed to kind of test the boundaries of the new game. Because I think, like, we only discovered, at least within the tech community, a lot of the issues with things like the rounds mode or the teams mode when we started playing competitions that utilised that mode. So I'll be interested to see, like, if and when the Game World Duo Cup starts to push its boundaries, if we see some other formats coming back, like, like the original, what was it, from 0 to Hero with the duos or the Spartan Cups or things like that, things that aren't on the game's own specific modes, like your endurance race, and to see if the game does hold up on the technical sides of things. But I mean, I'm a Trackmania player. I don't understand the whole back end of things. I'm not going to pretend to. At least through my experience of it is exactly, I'd agree with what you said there. I mean, Turbo, it's not as if we can expect, most games now don't come out, flawless. It's just a kind of a fact of the kind of current climate in gaming. But I mean, to take it away from the kind of the dull, kind of tone of this, overall, to kind of address the other side of things, I think that the launch has been very interesting in its impact on the community. Now, I'm sure you guys would have noticed this as well, but it has been almost a kind of point of unison with everyone actually giving the game a try. It's not as if people have went into this saying, I'm not interested in it at all, I'm not even going to give it a shot, which I'm very happy to see, because I was concerned about a possible split in the games and things like that. And I've seen a lot of old faces actually being interested in playing the game again. So, I mean, are you guys kind of seeing the same of me, that this, if anything, I mean, although we're in the kind of baby steps at the moment, do you think that this is going to perhaps, lead to a new breath of life into the community we already have?
Who wants to start? I mean, I just noticed it on my streams when people were coming into my stream and were asking, yo, is this game free to play? And just asking very basic questions. And they didn't even know who I am, which is like something really uncommon in Trackmania, because everyone knows each other in the community, because all of the players here are playing the game for super long, and there are coming so many new players into the game, which is really cool. And you can like explain that to them. But on the other hand, it were really a lot of people. It were a lot of people in my stream chat, even though I streamed at the prime time where I didn't really get too many views, but still people were coming to my chat and asking the same questions over and over again. And I think that some of them will actually stay as well.
The two takeaways there. Turbo is surprised he has no. Second of all, he has a lot of viewers, so somewhat shout out to himself there. But I mean, it's of course cool to see like Sander coming back to play, maybe Karin now moving to the new game. But if you let's go 1 year into the future, I think maybe the guys who like Trackmania Nations Forever are still going to be like, let's hunt AO1 again, let's hunt Huckalicious. But the thing that Turbo brings up there that is the good point is that a lot of people are coming into his chat that are new and want to learn about Trackmania, because that is the good thing about a new game, that you can get new players into the game, not necessarily just get the community together once again, but that's of course also important. But I think if you just speak about the launch itself, I think it's successful just by the numbers you get. You got the streamers that you could sort of dream about, XQC, Soda Pop in Lyric. You got the Circa from UK. So you got a lot of exposure. Trackmania has been one of the top 10 games on Twitch pretty much, I don't know, every day, but maybe every other day, simply because a big streamer is showcasing it. So just by that, I think is good. And I actually curious to see what the numbers are now. But Hill has said, I think it's 1 week ago, maybe now 10 days ago, that already they are double amount of players than Trackmania 2 Stadium. They already had, I don't remember the exact numbers, but that this release is more successful than Trackmania 2 Stadium and Trackmania Turbo. So successful release is the biggest takeaway. And now is maybe the problem Trackmania has. How are you going to keep those players? How are you going to keep these players that maybe find it fun to play the campaign maps, but eventually doesn't play campaign maps for 10 years, that wants to do something else in this game? And I don't know what you can do to keep them besides adding new seasonal campaigns, but maybe once the new seasonal campaign is out, then maybe they are gone, forgotten about Trackmania. So I don't know. It's curious to see how many players have actually downloaded it, but it's also curious to see in 3 months how many active players are playing that month.
Yeah.
I suppose it's kind of like the ZRT, spike that we see in the recent years. Like you'll see the active players list, rocket when the Zerator Cup comes around. But the real test of whether or not it's been a successful event, or, well, not a successful event, it's a bad phrase to use, whether it's been successful for the game, is to see if the numbers of active players throughout the rest of the months of the year has increased over, what it was before, which, I think is really important, that with all of these kind of big streamers coming in and lending, their massive exposure to the game, that you do have viewers who do then leak over into our communities, into our games, into our events, the projects we all run, and just, kind of getting involved, which I'd love to see, even if it's just, being around the open servers every now and then, just contributing to a positive atmosphere. What a lot of people have missed is through Trackmania 2 Stadium in particular, the open servers just kind of slowed down a lot. It was always the same people coming on. You weren't having the same kind of atmosphere where people are excited to hunt tracks and things like that, which is something that I think this game is bringing in. And I think with its, so many people coming in, it's something that the game can definitely capitalize on. I mean, certainly if Nadio are watching, I mean, I wouldn't really either be the one to give them the kind of silver bullet to tell them how they could keep this rush of new players onto the game. But I certainly hope they have some sort of plan in place, other than, kind of adding another 25 maps every quarter or something like that. Because, I mean, of course, with it being a subscription model, it's essentially going to be up to Nadio to justify to these people who have done your 3 months, who have done your year, to continue subscribing to the game throughout the lifespan of however long their interest stands, or however long the game stands itself. But the figures the personalities you were mentioning there, Eirik, I mean, exactly as you're saying, streamers you could only dream of having been involved in a game, and that has really had quite an impact on the Trackmania streaming scene in general. Even outside of that, not only are you seeing I would say a surge in popularity. Of course, these streamers are already popular, but your typical Trackmania players are experiencing elevated levels of popularity. You're seeing gift subs flying around like it's nothing on all of these big streams. I mean, certainly that's fantastic for them, and I'm very happy for them to be capitalizing on such a surge in Trackmania, which a lot of these people who have provided quality content in the game for years certainly deserve. But it's one thing I'm really enjoying seeing is just filtering through. I mean, obviously, I don't speak any other languages. Checking out people who speak English, of course, and just checking out all the new streamers, all the new people who are just discovering the game, who are getting the addiction that we sometimes speak about, and discussing it with them, letting their kind of infectious desire or like kind of join up with your own. It's nice to see that kind of fresh perspective on the game, and that kind of fresh, like, oh my god, what is this? Or or like that surge they get when they nail an author time or something like that. Whereas, I mean, experienced players like us, we don't really have that anymore. So it's nice to see that. It's nice to see so many new faces around, both bigger ones and smaller ones in terms of that. I mean, have you guys been checking out any of the other streamers that have been coming into the game, or mostly just hard to break old habits, would you say?
Well, just to start off with the first day, I was ready. I had a TV on with a stream. I had a iPad. I had a mobile phone. I had like multi Twitch there. But eventually, after 2 hours, when my head was burned, I was like, "What do I even learn from this besides maybe just checking out?" Because you can maybe watch a lot of different streams, but you cannot hear a lot of different streams. So I eventually just tried to see what maybe Spam and Riolo thought about the game, but then once you had some new big streamers, I found it more interesting to actually hear what they think about the game, because I said it multiple times that I think one of the things I found the most difficult is to get an outside view into Trackmania. I think I'm too much inside this hardcore bubble. The people I speak with daily are people who are esports players who have maybe the same vision. Like, they are also maybe just in this bubble, but we need to find out what the outside bubble thinks about this game, because if we want new players to come into the game, we need to understand how Trackmania is viewed from outside perspective. And that's why eventually the first week, and every time Lyric wants live, XQC, solo popping, I just want to hear what they thought about the game. I want to see what the chat thought about the game. And I think all of them actually liked the game. They all came back to play it again. So I don't think the problem is actually to get people to like Trackmania. It's like I mentioned in previous segment, that I think it's how to keep them in Trackmania. But now, like you mentioned, the top players are experiencing success. I'm watching pretty much every time I have, or let me rephrase that, because I haven't watched a stream in 1 week because I have no internet. But every time I have the chance that actually are at the place with internet, I watch Massa, who is now getting a lot of viewers, a lot of subscribers. I think if he goes live, it's 800 to 1,000 viewers. You have your countryman Pack, who's now the biggest UK streamer in Trackmania, is overtaking you there. But he had like 400 viewers, I think it was yesterday. So it's cool that people who like Trackmania and are like me, that just want to watch Trackmania, find these good players, find streamers from Trackmania, because XQC and Lyric and those are not going to stick around for 1 year, 2 years. So I'm trying my best to watch Trackmania streams, but it's hard now with no internet. So life is hard, man.
So you just you just said something about Massa, and 2 seconds ago, Massa is going live. I saw that one at the top right. So
He's streaming every day.
So what a coincidence. And I really like that he's streaming every day and keeps up that motivation, because most of the time he played for 1 week and then he lost motivation again. And you can really see by him just playing the game every day and grinding it, that the game is actually worth to grind it. And yeah, for me, I've watched a bit of the German cast from Trilux. It was actually very good, because he had some more knowledge than just the ordinary other players who have like not played the game so much than he did. And it was actually super good, because I looked into the comment section and people were like, yeah, do that more often and everything. They were really like hyped for this game and really liked it. And I think that there are a lot of new German streamers because of that, or like maybe more German people are trying out the game, which is really hard. And you also brought up the point by how to maintain the players. I think that the track of the day is actually a cool incentive into the game, but I mean it needs more like that, because some tracks are good or bad, are not favoring you. So I think that the campaign thingy, that you can actually see what ranking are you in each campaign. For example, in the Zerator Cup, you could have seen it, or in the solo mode or everything. This is really cool. Yo, I am like 10th in my district, or like 20th in my country, or something like that. And also that the game feels more dynamic than the games before that. So that is really, really cool. just wanted to bring up those points because I've noted that down.
Yeah. Just one thing I think is very important going forward with keeping or even small changes. If I was to suggest something to help retain some of the massive amount of kind of popularity that this game has had over the past few weeks from the exposure it's been given and from, you know, the fresh launch bringing a lot of people into the game at the same time, is one thing I was kind of critical of a little bit before it was some of the restrictions they had on the starter access. Just to bring up just two main parts of it that I do feel just a slight change wouldn't really harm the starter access as to what role it means to fill, but also can be greatly beneficial to the game, is first of all the ability to chat is restricted for people with starter access. They can join some lobbies, but they're restricted from being able to send any messages to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I recently found out that they can't actually play the track of the day either, which I think is quite a big misstep. I mean, what's really been, I think, for a lot of people, the thing that's really kept them in this game is getting involved in the community, either be through whatever facet they have done, be it they've came into a competitive community, they've came into a local community, like, you know, players who are from their region or something like that, or, you know, speed running, anything like that. Is the when they've been on servers with like-minded people, they've been talking away, they've been talking about the game, they've been discussing what they like about it, they've been kind of hyping themselves up a little bit about it, and also enjoying the community content instead of being restricted to Nadio's own campaigns, which I think would be something very important going forward, is to kind of remove or at least rethink that kind of restriction. Because, I mean, while you still want to give some sort of distinction between each edition, you want to allow the seeds to be planted so that you can reap the benefits of it. And I think that's a few restrictions which maybe just aren't needed.
Yeah, you want to include the players into the community and not say, yo, you don't have the version, you are here, you can't chat and do that. I think actually it's a good idea to let them like talk actually, or like just to enjoy other features in the game, not only the training and the campaign maps. But you can actually join via Uplay on a server if you have someone in your buddy list who has the upper versions. That's actually possible.
Yeah. I mean, there is a few ways around some of the restrictions and things like that. Like, people are finding ways around the skin restrictions and such. But, I mean, the unfortunate part of this, I mean, it's not like they'll kind of free zone in Trackmania Nations where we can kind of hope it flies under the radar and that it won't get patched. I mean, this is something I can imagine that they'll know about, and if they're interested in it, then they'll find a way to kind of restrict it. I'd imagine at the very least, if it's going to work out beneficial for them. But I mean, in terms of in terms of the situation at the moment, so I mean, we're kind of 3 weeks in to the launch of the game so far. I mean, given as what this episode was titled as, is first impressions. Now that you've kind of had your first impression, how do you feel about the next few weeks, the next few months, the next year or so for what you've seen of Trackmania and what you can now expect?
Well, I think the future is bright for Trackmania, but again, I'm gonna repeat myself. I'm curious to see how they are able to actually keep the players that are coming into the game. How they are, like you said, how are they gonna be integrated into the community that eventually are gonna help the game grow? Because I think it's a widely known that if there wasn't a Trackmania community that is this active, we wouldn't probably have a Trackmania. We would probably not have a new game. So the community has kept this game alive, and if this game want to keep growing and keeping alive for the future, we need new community members as well. The community members that has been around for so many years might come to a point in their life once they are like, okay, I'm too old, or not too old, but you're coming into a life situation when you don't have as much time as you had before. So I'm curious to see that, but I myself, I'm still gonna dedicate myself to Trackmania. I think it's, if you want to leave Trackmania, this is the most stupid time you could at least stick around for 1 year, and then maybe next July 1st, then you're gonna recap what is happening. Then you have been around to hopefully see updates that they are gonna do. Like Turbo said, this is a subscription model, so you have to come up with updates. If not, the people that are already in the game that you want to keep, they are not going to continue buying it. So a lot of stuff to cover and that is the part I care about, but also a lot of uncertainty in the future. But I'm positive, and
Yeah, I'm actually positive as well, because now we have, like, the Zorator Cup has ended and Virtual has announced a competition. So we can maybe see some smaller competition that being held in the next couple of days, months, or whatever. And then the TMGL will come. And I think this will also be a very important factor to see how maybe some other, like the second wave of players will come in, or how many players will actually stay in that game, because of course not everyone can or will stay in this game. I think you can compare it a bit like a stream. People come, people go, and eventually if they like it, they will come back next time again, and so on. And this is like what they pay for, whatever. If they have the free version, of course they can play with their friends or whatever. But we will see, and I'm definitely very interested in seeing what is happening or what will happen. But I think that the viewers will increase.
I think we can generally expect to see, quite a large increase over what, say, an October would have been like in Trackmania 2 Stadium compared to what an October would be like. Well, an upcoming October is going to be like once we've kind of got over the new game hype and actually settled into, the lifespan and the ongoing lifespan of the game. But I mean, I'm of course hopeful going forward, also a little bit anxious. I mean, I know the competitive community, so made up of like your dirt, full speed tech players, players of these certain competitive communities are a bit anxious to see how things are going to continue. I mean, of course, with the tech players not really having the kind of marquee tournament anymore. Now, with a lot of transitioning events transitioning, pardon me, from single styles into multi styles, which we've seen recently, has led to a kind of upheaval in what some of your top players are then moving into. I mean, example being like your Papu no longer really specialising in dirt events and really finding his way over to multi-style and things like that, and a lot of your tech talent then going away from some of the tournaments. But going on to the tournament side of things and the event side of things with the new game, I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks which we are down, and we've already seen quite a few events or either underway or having already taken place. I mean, namely the three which I believe are most worth mentioning in our episode today would be the Zerator Cup, the Trackmania Grand League show match, and the Pittsburgh Knights All-Round circuit, which had its most recent installment, or its first installment, yesterday. But just to start off with, guys, I mean, I know you both were deeply involved in the Zerator Cup, being in a covering capacity, and also Turbo as a playing capacity. I mean, we've seen quite a few changes for the Zerator Cup. It was, of course, very heavily impacted in their plans due to the COVID-19 ongoing situation, and also with it was one of the competitions which had a little bit of uncertainty with it, with the result of the new game being delayed. But I mean, how would you guys kind of set the scene for how at least the first stage is? Of course, we've got the upcoming finals on this Sunday. How would you guys kind of set the stage for how the Zerator Cup's been so far?
Go ahead and talk as a player first.
So as a player, it was terrible. Playing 6 rounds in 8 hours. This is like, dude, this was the most terrible thing I've ever done, really. Sorry to really shit talk that, but like playing 8 hours, 24 maps in all 6 rounds, you can do the math. This is 144 rounds of playing. Then you have to wait, they have to fetch the data. I mean, everything went good. I had only difficulties in round 2. But then round 1, 2, and 3 were, for me as a good player, were like easy, you know? And I think it took way too long, and they maybe should have put round 5 and maybe even round 6, maybe both of them, into the second day, because this took way too long. I had such a terrible headache after that. But matches were really close. The tournament was so stacked. I mean, I think in round 8 there were only like French-speaking people, if I recall correctly. I think the furthest who got there was Spam actually was on the 4th server, actually, yeah. But other than that, I think there were only French people. And you can really see how or what players have try-harded and what players have not.
Yeah, actually did think it was today. It's Tuesday, right? So yesterday I did a recap video and some sort of prediction video. So I'm not releasing that video until I have done all my interviews with the ZRT players, because eventually maybe some of them are gonna be mad and then not do an interview with me. But I can say what my biggest storylines is, and that is what Turbo is mentioning there, that this year is so French dominated. I posted on Twitter that this year it's the most we have ever had French players in the semifinals.
Yeah.
6 out of the 8 are from France, but you can somewhat call Junior French because he speaks French. You can somewhat call Yannick French because he speaks French. So if you are a French fan of the game, you will certainly enjoy at least a Sunday if there are going to be interviews there. But why? Maybe, Scottie, you mentioned pretty early in this episode that it's just fun to play this game. It's just fun to see what this game has to offer. And that is something Spam mentioned on his stream. I was following him the most, and he said that he hasn't put that much time into this event specifically because he wants to see what this game has to offer, want to see everything and not only what maps Serrator is building. Well, I think the French players who are maybe more integrated into the scene of Serrator and maybe has more hype for it, they're like, oh, I'm fine with just playing these maps. I'm fine with just no-lifing this, because if I get far into this tournament, I know what that can do for my stream. We just see Darker now, who got a lot of exposure from Kameto. He's now streaming, and suddenly he's one of the bigger streamers there. So I think the French players cared more, and in the end, it resulted in more stuff. But if you just look at the viewers, what this views for this cup was, I think maybe some people expected more. It peaked at 120,000 viewers. That was higher than last year, when it was 96,000 viewers. But I still believe some people said that they expected way more. And if you look at it, how can you actually expect so much more? Because if Trackmania is popular one place, that is France. I think almost Trackmania is somewhat maxed out in France. I don't think we're gonna get like 200k just because it's a new game. So I mean, I'm happy that it even got higher than it was last year, because then we also had a hype for the Senate in Strasbourg. And yeah, last storyline is that I expect more new faces to qualify. Serrar and Yannex hasn't been in the semifinal before, but Yannex is somewhat now known because Open Grand League. So I guess Serrar was the only like new face qualifying into the semifinals. And then you have like Carl Jr. been there every time. You have Bren, Papu, or Rel. People that has a history at this cup. So the best players are still the best players, even in this new game. That's my few storylines.
Mm-hmm. I guess to kind of pick up on what you were saying there, as you kind of left it as almost an unspoken question there, is why there has been a lot of almost a lack of involvement from a lot of your international faces, or even if not a lack of involvement, you know, why it is so French dominated at the kind of top of the field. And that's something I observed as well. I mean, we're seeing, as you exactly said there, I mean, French speaking people dominating the later stages of the tournament at pretty much every part of it. Either people who are French or with French communities. Of course, Carl Jr.'s community is French. Yannex's community is French, regardless of their nationalities. But what I believe the most important thing is about that for the kind of general community is it's just the way I would look at it, as exactly as you were mentioning from Spam's kind of point of view, is that the game is fresh, and a lot of your new players, a lot of your players kind of transitioning into this new game immediately are just wanting to see all this game has to offer. Whereas for the French community, the Zerator Cup, at least to a large majority of them, does mean that much more for them. It's a much bigger opportunity for them. It can possibly allow them a significant amount more exposure if you're wanting that to, you know, say get your stream kick-started. We've seen Zerator's tournaments have kick-started quite a few streamers' careers in the French community, made it even livable for some of them. So it's a lot more on the line for them. It's a lot more potential recognition for them because, of course, a lot of your viewer base is French. So, I mean, you want to be known to your own community by being deep in this tournament. I mean, that's how we hear about that. That's how we see a lot of these top players who are participating at these events. You're seeing, you know, little when you go into some of the servers of fan of Gwen or something like that, or which is nice to see, because these guys are getting the recognition they deserve for an immense amount of effort it takes to get to these kind of stages and to pull off these kind of performances. It's definitely very commendable. But I think one of the main changes as well, apart from the new game, which influenced the kind of international community kind of taking a step back from it, was that what they could get from it was kind of taken away a little bit. And what I mean by that is that there was going to be I draw a comparison. When I spoke to Wally, who's a good friend of mine, of course, he was a finalist at the 4th Zerator Cup, I believe, and
2016,
and maybe one of the earlier ones, if I remember correctly. But I asked him about the Zerator Cup, and he said it's the best event he's ever been to in his life, and that was because of the experience of playing in front of an auditorium of a few thousand people screaming their heads off. You know, that's an experience you do not get anywhere else in Trackmania, and that's what I believe some people are chasing. You know, they might not care so much about the prize money because it's not a an exponentially bigger prize money compared to any other events we've got. They're chasing that kind of chance to play, chance to be almost in a stadium or a in front of so many fans, which almost like being a football player, in front of the home audience or the away audience or something like that. And there was no possibility for that this time, as the cup was being played online. And you never saw a lot of your players who'd taken interest in the cup previously. So names that immediately spring to mind were the likes of Kappa and Pac, who have tried
he didn't play.
Who have tried to qualify for the offline phases a few times, if I remember correctly. I believe Pac was successful in the duo edition. I'm not too sure about Kappa though, but these players, didn't show up this time, be that down to some other constraints. Also, I never really saw, forgive me if they did participate and didn't really get as far, but some of your players from the international community who were very hyped and just missed out, so the likes of Rizo, Plasterex, players who were very specialised in, shall we say, the tricky style that Zerator offered, not really showing their faces for this tournament. And I think it's just what they stood to gain was not as much there, so they preferred to enjoy the new game for what it was. But I would say overall the event's still been good. I mean, maybe not on the kind of player side of things for you, Turbo. I mean, I could guess you're maybe still recovering from that, but I mean, I'm sure you guys will at least be watching the final. I mean, unfortunately for us, it looks like it's going to be an all-French kind of broadcast for the later stages, but I mean, I guess we could expect that.
I mean, just about the French. That's a tradition. I actually find myself enjoying Zerator Cast now, even though I understand Carl Jr., I understand Gwen, I understand Trackmania, but besides that, I don't know why. I don't know the English word, but you're some sort of damaged by the environment simply because you have watched it ever since 2015. That
brainwashed.
This is the new normal. I'm not supposed to complain about not having English cast. I'm just supposed to enjoy it. And I'm enjoying it now. But yeah, go ahead, Turbo.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of things noted down, and I mean, so the first thing was that the good players are still the best. I think that it will take some time. We've seen some new faces, for example, on the bobsleigh map, like Rookie or Rocket or something like this. On the map 8 from Zerator, I've never seen this guy, and he was local 1 there. So maybe we'll see players who can adapt to that and can perform in the future. And I think actually that the Zerator Cup event, just to come to that point, is way more prestigious for the people in France because, like you said, Zerator can start your career if you're authentic or whatever. It can start your career in streaming and can also like give you money. Maybe people think like this as well. If they're good in the game, they can maybe get some make some money with that, or they can be famous or whatever. And I think why English-speaking players have not been playing is because that the audience is missing. I was not motivated at all tryharding this Zerator Cup because I knew that I won't go on stage and I could not make it happen anyway because I'm not the fastest, even though my name is Turbo. But yeah, I had just no motivation to play it. Yeah, Granadi also didn't play the game, the tournament. he didn't attend. And yeah, keep it into perspective. I was 6th in Germany, and I think top 200 in the world in this campaign. So this is like only Frenchies are tryharding this one. Yeah, and with the broadcast, it's the same because I think the same that there is no English broadcast. I was casting the round of 8 with Riolu, and we were so like we were a bit disappointed, but it's the latest rule for ages now that we couldn't cast the quarterfinal together. But yeah, it is what it is. It's the latest rule, and therefore we have to take it.
Yeah, I suppose it's as you say, it's his house, his rules. You know, it's his tournament, it's his choice. I mean, we can only then kind of enjoy it from the outside, which again, as you say, is disappointing. But I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, his community is exclusively French, so it's certainly an understandable decision. He wants to kind of go to his own audience. You know, I guess he doesn't feel like an English cast brings anything to his experience. And I mean, when you're someone who's bringing in like 100k viewers, you're not really going to care about 800 views going to whoever's casting the English cast. It's not something you're going to really worry about. I mean, if especially if he has some sort of business aspirations for I don't know, the production of the cup itself. He wants it to be presented very well, so he wants to keep it all hands on within himself. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I saw the I think it was a production desk for the people who were behind the marketing sides of things for the Zerator Cup. I believe it was NTWU, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And it's just mad to look at. Like just screens everywhere of like the Zerator Cup streams and everything like that. So I mean, clearly he's got a big team working on it, and I can imagine with a very good amount of investment he puts into his events that, I mean, I certainly can't hold it against him. It's nothing I'm bitter about. It's just something I wish was different, personally. I mean, it would allow us to get a little bit of the slice of the pie. I mean, it would allow the rest of the world, so to speak, to give a platform and give some motivation to their players who are participating, who are very well capable of qualifying and even winning these events. I mean, we've seen that in years gone past. I mean, of course, now no longer around, but Javi Flyer, of course, is a winner of the Zerator Cup. And we've certainly had a lot of representatives from outside France who have shown they're capable of challenging and getting to the deep stages. But, I mean, not to just kind of speak exclusively of the Zerator Cup, as we have had some teasers of tournaments and also the starting of some other events here. But one of the other most important tournaments in the Trackmania scene at the moment is Trackmania Grand League. And we recently also had the show match for Trackmania Grand League, accompanying finally the full 16-player list of participants for the upcoming Season 2. With, of course, additions now of Gwen, Yannex, and Afi, replacing the outgoing Coco, Roland, and Revolution. With, I believe, the only orgless players being Evon, with Yannex and Bren's orgs yet to be announced. But, I mean, we saw the first glimpse of Trackmania Grand League on the new game, and I mean, as the kind of theme of this episode is first impressions. I mean, what was your guys' first impression of Trackmania Grand League being showcased in the show match?
So I think it was a really good showcase, but the thing that really was a bad thing for most of the people was, as always, the point system. That you lose points from the 4th map onwards when you are 9th or in a lower seeded placement. So that was, I think I've seen that one on Trilux comment section. I've seen that one on Riolo's comment section, and those was really a bad thing because people said that they won't they have not seen that in any kind of other motorsport. But in general, it really showed us that all of the players who are in this league, for example, because people said that Marcin, or aka Evon, is not a player that can compete with the other players or whatever, but he performed very, very good, and that this will be super close. And also Gwen not winning, maybe practicing for the Zorete Cup, is beatable, of course. So it's really interesting to see how he will perform. Gwen, Afi, and Yannick perform against the other players by the name of Pack, Carl Jr., all the top 5 players.
Yeah, just remember, Scottie, about our bet. I said Gwen is going to be top 3, and that looks just better and better. I mean, looking at the chat, once he was actually performing well on the first maps, people are like, are he trained? And then people in chat like, no, he's pretty much no trained and still showed up. But I think the biggest storyline here is that Pack said in an interview with me that he has something to prove this season in Trackmania Grand League simply because he didn't even qualify to Lyon. Once you think about Pack, you think about him as the main contender for Carl Jr. in together with Kappa, and then he's not even in Lyon. He didn't even qualify. But now he's motivated again. He seems to be streaming pretty much, and he had a lot of time simply because the COVID-19 situation has given him a harder time to actually do his job. But I'm curious to see what Pack is able to do in this upcoming season. If he will have time, I think he can even win it. But the main favorites, I guess, is still Carl Jr. and Gwen. But I'm really happy if you just talk about the orgs. That it looks like more or less everybody's going to have an org. I guess it's down to Evon if he gets an org. I hope he will get an org. But I'm also happy that we see Alliance coming, for example, to get actually Spam. I think if you are an org and coming into Trackmania, I think Spam is one of the better guys you can have. People might think of him as a streamer, but this guy is one of the best players still. 5th at Grand League last year, 4th at Lyon Esport. So hopefully he will not only be able to play for Alliance, but eventually keep them interested into investing into the game later on, like Pittsburgh now is doing with hosting the cup. Because it's one thing to have a player playing the game and just having the tag, but it's another thing to actually be invested in the game and doing stuff outside of Trackmania Grand League. And it seems like Alliance might do that simply because they have one of the guys who is most invested into creating content and creating stuff for himself and his stream, signing them for them. So positive so far about Trackmania Grand League, and the point system is something at least me and Scottie had talked about ever since it was announced, and I don't think that is going to change. But yeah, if they can change it, fine. But I'm not gonna. I think I've beaten that dead horse for a while now, so I'm gonna move on to other stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talk about the fact that it hasn't changed, and I mean, as you said there, I mean, beating the dead horse. There's no point, kind of going through at least why I thought it was wrong or why I thought it shouldn't have been a part of things. But I mean, like, one thing I will say as well as to what you're saying, it's very nice to see such big names coming into the tournament scene and being invested in some of the players who are involved with, exactly as you're saying, the likes of Alliance and such like that. I'd hope to see that a lot of the organisations that are involved in Trackmania do value their kind of involvement in it, as I was saying to you guys before I went live. I mean, when I've been trying to contact organisations to cast, some of the older organisations are kind of not really displaying signs of interest and engaging that much with the game anymore. It's more just they'll pay their player and let the player kind of do whatever they want. They don't really care so much about who streams or who does social media for the event. And Eirik's gone again. But one of the things which I'm most interested to see is kind of like we were talking about, like retaining players with each Trackmania edition coming, with each kind of period of Trackmania coming through. I'm very interested to see how we retain the interest of these orgs coming through if we give them other projects which may capture their interest instead of just Trackmania Grand League. If we have some other competitions where their name and their flag can be flown, say having some sort of Lyon esports tournament that's really, say sponsors are supported by Nadal, so that for example, Alliance can see that their player, that they're getting value for money. I'm sure a lot of these orgs will be putting in considerable investment into their players. I mean, I've heard some of the figures that have been kind of flown around in the background, so to speak. And as I say, a lot of these orgs are putting significant investment into their players, so I'm sure they want to be seeing a lot of kind of representation from their players and from their content creators and their teams around that. So I think that Trackmania Grand League is the pinnacle, but I'm hoping to see that Nadal have more plans to follow up around Trackmania Grand League instead of just OGL, as we've also discussed some issues with that. But were you guys surprised to see the kind of lack of change coming into this season?
No, I think they pretty much found their somewhat identity. They have found a system that they want. So maybe I don't know what changes I want. There are changes now. It's now from map 4 onwards to lose points. I think last season was from map 3. So eventually in the beta season, it was pretty much every map, right? And then yeah, getting closer and closer to maybe next season is just the last map that you lose points on. And then maybe in 3 seasons, you don't have that problem anymore. But pretty much what I expected. It doesn't feel necessarily. I think the only change is basically that it's a new game and that you have new orgs. I think if you had the same game, I don't think the format is that noticeable different besides the point system change. So it feels like Trackmania Grand League still.
Yeah, indeed. And it also feels like a little bit like the old games because you have all the new faces and they are all performing like on a good level. So you can see that the game maybe has some new things to offer. But on the other hand, people have adapted very quickly to the game because their knowledge about the game or their like learning skill is very good.
Mhm.
But if you talk about I forgot to mention that one of the changes is actually that we have 3 players coming in, and then hopefully they will actually change something about this season. Like I mentioned, I think when it's going to be up top 3, I think it's going to be now together with Pack and Kappa the main contender for Carl Junior, because I think it's going to be both good at the endurance format, but also going to be good at the cup format. Some players have like maybe I bring up Kappa as an example pretty much every time. I think he's better in cup mode. I think he's a better contender there to actually be the best instead of I don't view him as necessarily the best endurance player. But I think Gwen can be both. So how do you guys actually think that? I mean, I think we can agree that Gwen is going to be a contender. But if you talk about Afi and Yannick, do you think they are going to be battling for the last spots? Do you think that maybe they can have a secure place in the playoff, maybe even challenge for one of the top placements? How do you view the 2 Swiss players placing in this league?
Ooh, that's a tough one, actually. Go for
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, from my kind of side of things, I mean, Gwen has always kind of had a lot of hype around him from primarily the kind of pace he sets out. I mean, along with the same kind of reason the likes of Novus gets a lot of hype at the moment in tech is that he's really setting a lot of these competitions alight by getting really sick times in match and things like that, and also bringing consistency into his game. So I reckon he's definitely going to be the pinnacle of the new players that are coming into the Grand League season. But for Yannick and Afi, for me, it just really depends on the field around them. I mean, we've seen a lot of the players involved in the Grand League having massively different performances. My 2 main examples for that would be Bren and Pack. We've seen Pack go from challenging for the number 1 spot in previous editions of Trackmania Grand League to not even qualifying for the top 8 in last season. And we've also seen Bren having very much wavering performances in Trackmania Grand League, albeit due to other sort of circumstances. But for them, I mean, I don't believe they have the same kind of raw pace as Gwen seems to exhibit at the moment. I mean, perhaps Afi has the consistency, but in this sort of format, I mean, you can be consistent, but when the level is stepping up that much more than Open Grand League, then consistency isn't always going to be enough. Unless it's a really difficult map, you're seeing a large amount of people completing 6 lappers without crashing. It is then decided by who's the fastest. And if you've mostly got consistency on your side, which I believe would be Afi's strongest quality, then I would say that he might be in trouble when it comes to fighting for when it's a battle between for the 8th position, for the safe position, when he has some players around him that we know are lightning in a bottle, like Massa. Massa has the pace to challenge anyone in these sort of tracks, but it's the consistency that lets him down. Whereas it might be that one map where Massa manages to pull it off, and then Afi remaining consistent and sticking to his strengths might be the one in a disadvantage. But it's really hard to say. I'm mostly going to wait until week 1, week 2 of Trackmania Grand League before really making my final kind of pick of who I think's the real top contenders for this. Because, I mean, you could say someone like Pack and then he could turn in the same kind of performance as last season, as he's either not as interested or he's not got as much time. So I've not got high hopes for them, but I don't imagine them being players who will be slaving for the bottom 2 positions. I believe their motivation and their drive to be part of this competition is going to allow them to take some places for those who are. I mean, it feels like some of them, at least in last season, were just driving to keep their spot. They weren't driving to aspire to win. They weren't or anything like that. Hopefully, this new game and this new environment kind of injects a little bit into the arm, a little bit of energy into the arm. But I think they'll do good. But now's not their breakout season, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because Peck has not really practiced too much. I mean, I have casted for Eminem last season, and he was like, yo, I've just practiced those decks for 30 minutes or so. And then in the OGL, he was actually a contender. I think he was third in there behind Afi and Gwen, if I recall correctly. So if he practiced the maps, he is performing very good. And I think with Afi and Yannick, we have like very different players when we see Afi getting all 200 SDMs. And on the other hand, Yannick being also a very intelligent player. You can also see it when he builds maps for the Sportix Cup or Zerator maps or whatever. He can pull off the tricksters, what Afi is also capable of doing. But as well as you, Paul, I won't really say if a player can perform or can contest someone. It also depends on the maps who can like pick them up the best and everything like that. I think the beta step or the beta match gives us a good overview here, but or the test match, whatever. But I think eventually everything will be different on the 13th of September.
Yeah, funny that you bring up Afi and being consistent. I had him on once again on my YouTube channel, and I brought up the question about how is the mentality different from you in Open Grand League to now the first Trackmania Grand League show match that you played, and he was like, well, now I cannot even save that much anymore. If I did that in Open Grand League, I was still one of the faster players, but now I'm against the best of the best. If I save, then I'm going to be last. So I also need to risk now. I also need to take chances to even just be up there. And that is maybe something we might see different results from just Afi, because maybe now he's not focusing on being that consistent. Maybe now he is also going to value that risky part more, simply because if you are first, then you get more points than, let's say, if you risk and don't get top 8, at least then you have a chance at being top 8 instead of if you save and then you basically know that you're outside top 8 simply because you're not fast enough. But you guys are boring. You're not predicting anything. I'm gonna be ballsy once again. I think I was ballsy once I predicted the Gwen pretty early to be top 3. People was somewhat disrespecting him just because it's once again this meme culture about some people saying it's good, but they think they're saying it in a way that Gwen is better than Carl Jr. after step 1 of Open Grand League. And then the response from the other side of the community is like, yeah, Gwen is not even going to be top 16 in the world. So it's sort of two worlds. But coming back to my point, I'm going to boldly, I'm going to say that all 3 from the Open Grand League are going to be top 8 simply because they are going to be more motivated than players that have sticked around for so long. And I think motivation is a key part here. Afi qualified almost to the Serati, and he didn't even take it that serious. I asked Yannick, are you taking this serious? No, he's also taking Trackmania Grand League more serious, and he's in the Serati Cup, so they are talented players. All of them are coming to the playoff, and Gwen is top 3, like I said, and I said for a year now.
That's what I like to hear. Putting his balls out on the table, Master Holdal.
Nice one.
I like it.
Now you know nobody's coming to playoff. The side bet curse is on.
Yeah, the side bet's curse is on. I won't curse anyone else. I mean, we'll have none of the fear left if I can put mine on the line with you. But something which I was kind of thinking of whether or not I would bring up here. But I mean, just before I kind of get on to that, one of the kind of controversies which was brought up recently, actually, by Trilux when he was mentioning about the point system. I mean, not to kind of harp back onto the point system, more to take this from another point. He decided to run a public vote on his Twitter page, which, if I remember correctly, at my last check, got 3,000 to 4,000 votes, and it was whether or not whether or not his audience found the point system good, or, as I believe the German word was, schlecht. Which I believe translates to shit. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not only bad.
Oh, bad. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, same difference.
Shit is scheiße.
Okay, thank you.
But bad in English is shit in Scottish.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, my man's been listening. But we saw the bad or shit option get quite an overwhelming majority. I mean, it was more than 60% of the vote they managed to take. for that to say that his audience did not support the way the point system was working. Now, the whole reason for this point system was to make it more entertaining for the viewer and to make it more exciting for the viewer. But I mean, not to take that as just, that's what everyone thinks, but I mean, when you've took quite a decent sample size there, that's over 3,000 people at the very least. I mean, forgive me for not checking the exact count before coming on, but I mean, a lot of people have came out and said they don't support that. I mean, what would you kind of do if you're in Nadal's shoes at that point? I mean, do you have the confidence in your own point system and keep doing that? Or, I mean, you've heard people complaining since day dot. I mean, at what point does it get to where they sit down and think, maybe we might actually start changing some things up here?
I mean, I think the story for Trackmania Grand League ever since it was announced is that no matter what sort of backlash they have gotten, even from the community, even from the public, they have sort of stick to their plan ever since the start. I have said that I respect SoftDB and Gillies actually for doing that, simply because, I mean, if I had that sort of shitstorm, I would maybe even consider just, why even bother? Just end it. But they at least they have stick to their plan, and I don't think this is gonna change anything. I mean, it's good that Trillis is vocal about it. He's known in the scene, but has still been gone for a while, so he has again this outside bubble perspective. But I don't think they're going to change it. Then you probably change again the whole identity of the Trackmania Grand League, the sort of thing they have. Maybe they actually thought about this before they even thought about the league, that it would be cool to have some sort of cup where you lose all the points and not only gain all the points. Again, I don't like it. I think once map 5 and 6 is out, you see casters spectating who is 9 instead of who is second. So you care more about if number 9 is overtaking number 8 instead of if number 2 is overtaking number 1. So you move the perspective to actually who is losing points instead of who is gaining points. And ever since I followed Trackmania, I just want to watch the best of the best, and the best of the best are battling for the first place, at least the best in that round. So I agree with the poll. I think it should be changed, but if that is going to base your decision about if you're going to watch Trackmania or not, I think you're not going to watch Trackmania, because I don't think it's going to be changed.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, because I mean, their intention was that they want to make it very, very entertaining to the audience. But on the other hand, should they really get punished by losing maybe minus 60 points or minus 50? We have seen all spam, he lost so many points last year or last edition, and this is very heartbreaking to see. If you just get a bug or something and you're out, not sure if this can happen again, because you said, Paul, that you have not gotten any bugs. I've gotten them already. Only small landing bugs or so, but things like that can happen, and RNG can be on the side or not on your side in this part. So I think as well that they should change it, but now I'm asking the question, what point system should they use? Should they use the MotoGP point system? Because now, actually, in the last step, it's getting exciting.
Yeah, I think once again, just want to, I think the most, the sentence that sticks out the most to me, maybe from all the interviews I've done with Softie, is, I guess, 5 hours in total, but that the thing about Trackmania Grand League is that they want the viewer to feel that nothing is decided until the very last turn. Anything can happen. And then I think they might find it funny that, or not funny, but I think they might find it easy to rely on, then someone needs to do a mistake, and then they might lose all the points. But you don't need to have that just because you want everything to be decided in the last turn. Best example happened on Sunday. Bad Lulu was behind the glass until one last turn. He overtook him, and people share that clip like hell. I think I uploaded it myself simply because I saw it as a funny moment. I do that, and of course, I knew that if that went viral, I will get followers. But Domingo uploaded that himself. Other channels uploaded it, and every time it was shared, people like, "Yeah, this is Trackmania." Trillis shared it. This is Trackmania. So you don't need to be penalized just because everything needs to be decided in the last turn. It can also simply be like a cup mode when, if you overtake someone, well, then you advance. But again, finalist mode is also something Hillis says that he has to defend in the start. So I guess maybe he viewed this as the same thing that, yeah, I have to defend this in the start, and eventually in 3 years people are gonna like this system. But I don't know how history is gonna be, if it's gonna be
Indeed.
kind or harsh to the champions mode system.
But yeah,
For
I
sure.
mean, on the other hand, round mode or like a laps is something else than like normal rounds on a track. So I mean, we had some really close rounds. I remember this battle by Kappa and Carl Jr., I think.
Yep.
I think in the beta season,
Mm.
things can get really interesting, but other things can also get boring if one makes a mistake in this identity and there's 8 seconds behind. I don't know. We had some really close battles, but I mean, in the end of the day, it's their choice how they want to like do that. And on the other hand, we have the in the playoff phase, we don't have the actual we have like normal cup mode there.
Yeah, but if you talk about the playoff, I think when people saw the combine, you had 4 different sort of types, and people actually enjoyed that because then
really
you
good.
view it as like, the best player in the end wins overall. But do you guys think all should be cup mode? Should all be champions mode? Should they switch the playoff system every time, or is the best players eventually going to be crowned in cup mode?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, you definitely don't want to change it up every time. I mean, it's even like just a silly thing like our podcast today. We always want it to be the same each time. We want it to be a Tuesday at 9 p.m. because people will know what to expect. They'll know to come on and look at our beautiful faces. That's what you want when you're going on to Trackmania Grand League. I mean, more than just looking at our beautiful faces, but you want to know what you're able to expect. You want to go on there and you want to know that this is how it's going to work. You don't want to be going on there confused, like, wait, what's going to be happening this week or this year, or something like that. So I think that it definitely shouldn't change each time, but it's impossible to say because there's always going to be. I mean, we had the old arguments of whether or not even cup mode was the best. There's always going to be a positive or a negative to each system. So, I mean, I respect them for sticking to their guns as much as I might not agree with it. But, I mean, we can argue about it. But whether or not they're actually going to change it, I suppose, is the only kind of point that matters there, which I don't think they will.
I think actually that the combine was very good and also very versatile because you had the actual TMGL step. You had the playoffs where it really favors players who risk like Massa or someone other. And it was just really, really good. I enjoyed it as a caster, and also when I rewatched some other VODs, it was really nice to watch actually. So I think they should definitely stick to the combine match, and maybe the playoffs were like only cup mode. So maybe like introduce something like seeding, or I don't know what you can do there, or like do the combine or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but the problem, just again, with the combine, compared to what Softy said, that he doesn't want everything to be sort of decided before. I think, if I recall
True.
correctly, like Afi and Gwen had secured themselves a spot in Trackmania
Before
Grand
the
League
last,
before the last, simply because Giannis ended up having a bug, and then Gwen and Afi simply had too many points to eventually catch up to. But as a guy who likes the best player to win, I think also that format benefits more players. Like Massa has been vocal about maybe maybe the rounds, what do you call it, the laps mode, not being beneficial to him. But if he qualified into maybe Lyon once it's cup mode, then maybe he's again a top contender simply because he's so fast, and you get punished less if you crash in cup mode than you do in endurance format. So a lot to go ahead, but what do you? I don't know. We are probably soon running up if our host, but I'm gonna ask one question. What do you guys think about this casting system? Should it be still 16 different channels, or should we this season have an official English cast? I casted last season, but I have not at least been asked to cast an official English channel, which I actually hope that will be implemented. But I have not heard anything about it. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's best to go ahead with each streamer having, or each team having a streamer, or should we now narrow it down to like it was in the show match actually, English, French, German, and then if you're English community, all people gather at the same place, and you're not having to split them into 16 different parts?
I mean, it's got its positives and negatives for me. I mean, personally, I don't like that there's so many different casts for essentially the same tournament. That's not really what I liked in the initial season one, because I mean, as much as that meant I then got an opportunity to cast it, it also meant that, for example, my channel and Turbo also got the opportunity to cast in season one, weren't getting the same exposure of which they would have got if they were, the only caster of the event. And while that's easy to say is a good thing in terms, or sorry, a bad thing for, at least they did get the opportunity, which I believe is the important part to that. But you're splitting so many people over different, different English language casts, for example, and I see the need, I see the benefit for that, and giving these other casters. Say, I mean, if it was an official English cast, I don't think I would have gotten the opportunity to cast. I don't think me and Eirik would have been in a position where
I'm on good side with Nadeo. I'm on good side with Softy.
Hi, I mean, when you're pulling in, 500 viewers on Twitch, I think they'll maybe consider us. But
I'm on YouTube, 1,000 viewers easy.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what we kind of saw from the show match is that they were really kind of going for who I thought was their favorite in terms of geek, and the biggest viewer English caster, which was Virtual, which I think shows how it cannot work in terms of a single English cast. Is that there's so many great casters out there that it's going to be extremely difficult to consolidate just one cast that works, of course, and that completely shuts out so many people from having an opportunity to cast the biggest tournament there is, especially when some of these casters are equally as good as some of the casters who were already getting opportunities. So it's very difficult to say. I mean, personally, as a viewer, I would prefer to just have one stream to watch. I mean, picking's fine if you've got a preference, but I mean, I really would only have a preference if one cast is better than the other. I'd prefer it just to have one good cast that I watch, rather than have to pull up 8 different streams to find out what one I like best. That's my way of looking at it. But I recognize that if it wasn't this way, I probably wouldn't get to cast. So I'm kind of stuck in how I feel about it.
So I think, I mean, you said that people will actually go to other channels and pick out what cast they like more, but I think that actually was not the case in the last season. I think how they should deal with it now is you have, like, I don't know, we have our caster Discord, we have a pool of casters who are English speaking right now. There are 8 online, 7 without Riolu. Maybe everyone should get an opportunity to just cast around with like a dual partner, maybe us two cast step 3. Then there is, I don't know, geek and virtual casting around, or step 1 or so, and maybe then let others decide whether they like or dislike the cast, something like that. But I think that 16 casts is way too much. I mean, this gives everyone the opportunity, and not all of them are English or French speaking, but it is way too much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just one kind of final point I wanted to address about Trackmania Grand League. It's not something I've really spoken a lot about public. I mean, Eirik, I'm sure I would have spoken to you quite a bit about this, and it was regarding something I found to be rather controversial, and I was wanting to know what you guys...
Is it Sardosh?
Not Sardosh, no, not Sardosh for once, but something I want to know what you guys thinking as well, what you guys in the chat thought. I mean, we've had our controversies in Trackmania, normally nothing too, big. We've had a few issues here and there, but something I wanted to bring up was regarding the Combine itself. Basically, what had kind of been found out through the Combine is, of course, how it was supposed to work. Is you had your players who were guaranteed to be in, the likes of Gwen and Afi, players who were guaranteed to be not considered for the future, which I believe is Volnera, Hydra, Coco, and Roland. And then the rest was optional depending on who the orgs wanted to then pick up. So, I mean, say Big wants to stick with Massa, then Massa's in for next season. Eminem wants to stick with Pac, Pac's in for next season. But if Eminem want to go with someone else, then that person is then in place of Pac, for example. Now, recently, the kind of controversial part of it, so to speak, was when it had the information essentially came out that some of the people who were optional, namely that was Legu, Tricky, and Aegir, were not offered to organizations as an option, so to speak, whereas all of the other Orgless players were. So, of course, I'm not going to go through them, as some of them still haven't got their deals signed up and things like that. But some of the players who were part of the Combine and were, by the Nadio's own rules, stated as options, were not given the optional chance to be even part of Trackmania Grand League. I mean, I've spoken to organisations directly to find out a bit more information on this, and some of the organisations didn't even know of these players. You know, they weren't told about them, they weren't offered them, and I think with what we were saying earlier about motivation, especially in terms of Open Grand League, I can guess if you're a player like Legu, Tricky, or Ager, then that's quite a killer blow to your motivation, and that's quite a bit of a kick in the balls, in my opinion. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about that. I mean, is that me kind of explaining it as making a mountain out of a molehill, or is that do you guys think that's an issue which does deserve to be spoken about?
Both, maybe, but I think in the end it's not going to be. I think I brought up this question or point once it was announced that orgs has to pick their players. That how are they going to pick it? How are a new org coming into the Trackmania, and then okay, I know that the history of the game. Spam is world champion from 2012. He was fourth at the Lyon Esports. So I think SoftB has a big hand in this. I think he is helping the orgs a lot. Essentially, picking out in his head an org, and then essentially maybe, okay, I have a player in my mind. BDS, Switzerland's org. Okay, I know Afi is there. I'm not going to suggest Egger, Legu, Tricky, because I want a player to represent the org and then eventually a country. So I think SoftB essentially suggests one player to an org, and if they are saying no, then maybe the others. But I think SoftB has a big hand in this, and I'm happy at least with it, because I think SoftB has a much better understanding about who is the best players in Trackmania than a potential new org has. But I can understand the motivational part, that maybe it feels like even though you are a top player, maybe you could have been in Trackmania Grand League if someone else was doing this job. That you also need to be a top player. You need to be one of the let's say top 20 in the world, but you also maybe need to let's convince Softy as well, maybe, that hey, I'm ready for this, give me a chance. So it's more than just playing a game that you feel like you're having, sort of like the UFC. If you want a title shot in the UFC, you need to win a lot of fights, but you also need to be on the good side of Dana White to eventually get it. So I don't have a big problem with that, but I think the bigger problem I have is simply that you're so confused after the combine, like who is actually out, who is in, and then you have to wait 4 months until you. If the best part would be like football when it's just a relegation, but I understand with orgs that can be difficult. So as of right now, I'm fine with it, and I'm happy that maybe Scottie. That would be a dream world. Like, if Scottie picked the players, maybe I would be in there. But that Softy B is actually picking instead of just a random org coming in. Maybe see like a good example, maybe like coming in from France, seeing that Schultz have a lot of viewers, and like, yeah, we want Schultz to play, and then he's gonna get wrecked. So I'm glad Softy B is sort of a middleman there.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, what really comes or has come as a surprise for me was that Yannick's got picked, because I thought, Revo is definitely in. And then all of a sudden, Yannick's could have played. But maybe it's also the personality that a player has. For example, Yannick's is streaming. Revolution is like more of a person who is just playing and like playing for his own, and not like streaming or doing any sort of social media work. I mean, he created Twitter 1 year ago.
And he has the best Twitter picture in the world, including me.
First, yeah. But you see, I mean, maybe players are more interested concerning now that they are like a bit more of an influencer, so that they can like market those players better than others. So I think it's good, but bad on the other hand as well, when there's Revolution, who's also playing very good, can't have another shot at the next season.
He was not playing good in the last season, though.
Yeah.
I'm sort of happy. I'm a good friend, or not a good friend, but I like Revolution. But I think even more players should have been out from that Trackmania Grand League season, simply because, like Scottie said, in the end, it felt like they just played because they had to play, not because maybe they had the goal of winning. And as of you're like, If your average placement is 11 out of 16, then maybe time to get the motivation back.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mean it that way.
I understand. Yeah.
He has the pace, and in the first step, he actually played very good. But still, I mean, it is still I think it's good that there is like to come to a conclusion that Softy is the middleman behind that, and then he says or tries to match the players with an organization. That's actually a good thing, but on the other hand, it's like a bit unfair for other players. But yeah, what do you want to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of have my final thought on it, I mean, I know obviously Nadal do have a big hand in deciding who gets through to this, but when this is your premier competition, I mean, there was already a kind of bit of murmurings, when pretty much everyone for season 1 was directly invited to the tournament. And now to know that even if you do get through to the combine, unless you get one of the top 2 spots in such an elite field, then essentially whether or not you get into the tournament is not within your hands at all. And I mean, it concerns me when it gets down to which player is more popular in place of which player is better. Then we're kind of crossing the line over to which is a field which I don't think Trackmania I didn't think Trackmania Grand League wanted to go in. Kind of having, it being one person who just decides goes in and out. And I mean, I'm sure Softy knows what he's doing. I'm not the person to question, although we've had disagreements in the past, to say the least. But I mean, I'm sure he knows what he's doing. I'm sure he thinks what he's doing is right. But I do feel a little bit uncomfortable, especially as I was a person who had aspirations trying to get through Open Grand League into next season. As I'm looking at now and I'm thinking that my performance, no matter how good it is, won't be enough if I get top 2. I need to do so much work other than that. And I guess for me as well, that's such a foreign concept. Used to, of course, getting deep in tournaments just simply being a good player instead of, taking the Conor McGregor approach, being a really good fighter and being very good at marketing is what gets you the dollar bills, I suppose. But that's really all else I had left to say on it. Was there
But just to sort of be the devil's advocate here, let's say that only 2 players advance from the combine. It's Afi and Gwen. Then I would be left with a feeling about why not Yannick. And looking at the combine sheet now, Yannick was the 4th best player there. Revolution was number 9, so he was not even the top half of it. And if you look at the players that are in the Trackmania Grand League now, it's only Matt who is in that was behind Revolution. So, like I said, if ideal world for me would be that the best players just go up and the bad players go down. I would even go as far as to say top 8 from combine in, top out, not top, bottom 8 out. So it was 3 good players from Open Grand League in that combine. It was, and also the whole season overall, it was Gwen, Afi, and Yannick. And I'm happy that they're in. I'm happy that don't want to sound like I'm just defending Softy B just because I want to have him on my podcast for a 6th time or something, but I'm actually happy that he had the balls, or what do you want to say, to do that. Like, Yannick got pretty much, after I spoke to Yannick, he said pretty much after the combine was over, Softy B said that, don't worry, you are going to be in simply because you are one of the best players. And I agree with that. So I'm supporting that. But I guess the point you bring up is that maybe in the future, this can be a bigger problem once it maybe come down to one of these popular guys being essentially number 10 in the combine, like Matt, that why is he still in instead of maybe Legu that was top 8. So it can be a problem in the future, but for now I'm happy that Yannick is in, and I'm happy that the 3 players from Open Grand League are in. But
yeah, it worked out in this scenario, but maybe we will see maybe some other players like Granadi or so, who's also a very interesting personality. Maybe he qualifies for the combine match or whatever, and he's like in top 12 just to just list a scenario. And then he says, yo, an organization is interested into you, you want to play, and then another player goes out. So we will see in the future. We can't forecast it. And I think Trackmania will really offer us great things in the future.
Final prediction, since you didn't have the balls to predict either the Zero T Cup or the Trackmania Grand League. I mean, we didn't predict Zero T, but if you have a player that you want to see in season, what would that be? Season 3, eventually season 4, simply because you had a better season. But who is going to qualify? Who's going to be the next players to advance? Is it then going to be Coco, who says that now he's motivated again, who didn't have the motivation last season? Is it going to be Revolution, who's saying that, they kicked me out, now I got something to prove? Or is it going to be someone like maybe Serrar or
Damn it, I wanted to
Glass
name him.
or Dole that is up and
Binks,
coming?
actually.
Yeah,
Binks.
the guy who
I
you
think.
didn't know anything about and eventually qualified to the grand final, right?
I think, yeah, dude, I think that was like one of the best tournaments I've ever casted, the French regionals, and this showed me that Coco is unbeatable if he knows the map, so he has a chance. Also, Binks and Xera, they're all very good, but then we have players like Glass, Darker, I don't know, Snow. I'm just looking at the sheet here, so we have a lot of French players who are actually very good. From the German side, I think Granadi as well. He has the pace. Onio is playing as well now. But other than that, I don't know.
I want to see.
So those are my guesses who can maybe make it to the
Yeah,
top
yeah.
match. Of course, not me. I'm trying to get top match once, like last one. But gold will be my goal.
Yeah. I want to see likes of Onyo Granade maybe. Binks also, he's been performing really well, and of course my personal favourite, Scottie 2.0. Got to see him.
That's the 4.0 or what?
4.0 maybe we'll see.
But yeah, just the people that you mentioned there, both of you are actually either French or German, and ever since we all remember the qualification from the beta season, then it was the regional qualifier simply because they want countries to come into the game. Like, I'm from UK, I see Pac, I'm naturally going to cheer for him simply because it's some sort of national pride. So I think not to go back if the best players are going to be the best players, but let's say if Mi4 qualifies into combine, I think he will have a better chance than, let's say, that if Tricky qualifies into the combine, simply because then Adeo sees an opportunity to come into the Nordic market. So I'm actually surprised about Egger not being picked because he's Hungarian. We don't have a Hungarian in Trackmania Grand League. Then you could have entered that market, but so I'm gonna pick Mi4 and Egger actually to qualify into the next season.
Oh, very controversial pick. I mean, Egger,
As always.
Egger has the pace. As we have seen, he qualified to the combine. But Mi4, I'm not sure. Don't take it offensive if he watches it. But how good is he besides tech?
I mean, he was top 10 in Open Grand League, if I recall.
Yeah,
correctly.
but still, I mean, he didn't qualify to the combine.
Yeah, it was pretty close. So
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke to him during it, and he was sort of like this. I mean, I think he and Scottie had the same approach in the start. Like, let's see if I like it or not, and then eventually I decides to step up or step down. I think Mi4 stepped up and Scottie stepped down.
Yeah,
so
sure.
if that's the continued trend, then I have my hopes on him. But again, maybe biased because he's my only disc golf friend in Trackmania. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I completely forgot about his OGL performance. So don't
Yeah.
take it offensive. Of course, now I know.
Tweet longer incoming.
Yeah, guys. I mean, that has. Well, I suppose that's TMGL, at least the show match side of things, kind of wrapped up. I mean, we've still got a whole season to look forward to. I mean, we've got a new Open Grand League, we've got a new Trackmania Grand League, and of course, we've got some more events which we'll be able to talk about in episodes going forward. I mean, as I've said, I mean, this is only 3 weeks deep into Trackmania, and we've already got so much to talk about, but there's not enough time left in the day, guys.
You want to predict for TRT before we end, or
ZRT top out?
Top final or top final, grand final, and then top 4?
I don't remember the exact semi-finals, but I'm going to say 2 people are going to get to the grand final for sure. And that's Carl Jr. and Gwen.
Yeah.
They're in the same semi-final.
Oh, well, they're easy clap then.
So Carl Jr. will lose over Gwen. Gwen will win this one. Gwen will win this competition. And then we have Carl Jr. in second. Then I think Aurel is there. Bad Ludus. Wait, what was the second semi-final? Is it Aurel?
First semi-final, Bren, Papu, Aurel, Serrar. So the other one is Yannex, Bad Lulu, Gwen, and Carl Jr.
So I think that Aurel and Serra will also go into the final.
Oh, you think Serra is going to beat Papu and Bren?
Yeah.
Do you talk about ballsy picks? That's the most ballsy pick of the day.
I mean, it's very, very hard to tell, but I think everyone has a chance eventually. And Sarah has definitely the pace, but also Papu didn't really seem too strong for me. He was very fast, but the matches I've seen, people like, I don't know, Aurel or Brand were just a bit faster.
Bullshit.
Maybe I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
I
He
don't
won
know.
like 7 out of no,
Really?
6 out of 9 rounds he played.
Yeah,
But
okay.
to your
Then
point, that
I
was the earlier rounds, but he also won the quarterfinal. So
yeah, then we are talking about
that's the
different
story.
matches.
That's the story of the Papu. Everybody underestimated him every year, and then it comes to the grand
Yeah,
final.
true.
But maybe this is his year to win it. But again, I think I think Gwen and Carl Jr. are the two biggest favorite. You have to wait until Thursday until my predictions. I have Trackmania live tomorrow with the guests, so I don't want to put my predictions out there yet. But like it mattered, I don't think anybody would care. But I want to get some views on my predictions as well.
Yeah, we only look at the predictions to see who's going to be out first rather than who's going to be in first. We know what the sign
Bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. So we just know how to counter. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for our next podcast, of course, same time next week at 9 p.m., joined by the same guys, of course, with Eirik Holdal and Turbo here. You will, of course, have the Zerator Cup finals, which will be upcoming Sunday, I believe. Not sure the times exactly, but check that definitely, as there will no doubt be a topic of our conversation. And I believe perhaps my two guests may be doing a special podcast.
Hello.
Entirely.
Hello.
But I'm sure if you check out their social media feeds, which will be available on, I'm sure, on your screen or in their respective channels, check them out and check out the special they'll be doing later on in the week. But that has been it for us today, guys. This has been the comeback to Let's Talk Trackmania. It's been a pleasure being joined by you guys again. Next week, we're going to do it again. I'll see you guys all there later. But anything else left from you, my fellow friends, my fellow Let's Talk Trackmania people?
Yeah, Turbo, when do you want to do it on Sunday, actually? Are we actually going to do some sort of
yeah,
live,
let's do it. Why not?
Okay.
I'm gonna inform myself, maybe like 12-1,
Okay.
something like that.
12, yeah, for people that want to talk more Trackmania, to get the final prediction, the final latest news, then I guess you can tune in then. But self-advertising, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be joined by the Zeta T players on a YouTube live.
Nice.
So if you want to hear about their point of view, then tune in. I already interviewed Gwen, so I managed to get him to speak English. That's a good enough reason to actually tune in. But yeah,
cool.
If not, if you want the 300 tweets during the weekend, then I'm your place. If you want 2 tweets, I guess Scottie, it's your place. And if you want somewhat of a normal tweet activity, then Turbo is your place. But it's been fun to talking with you guys. We scheduled 1 hour and then it's 1 hour and 40 minutes. So that's a good sign, right?
Yeah.
Have to pee since 2 hours. Hello.
Yeah. Well, we'll release you. But again, guys, it has been a pleasure being joined by you once again and bringing Let's Talk Trackmania to the masses. Just a quick note before we do go off. So, of course, this is brought to us by ESAC.gg, which is looking for some front-end developers to help with the ongoing competitive platform project. So get in touch as soon as possible if you guys are wanting to help out. And, of course, thanks to you guys for joining, and thanks to everyone else for joining. And no doubt we'll see you all next week. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure the other two are looking forward to it. But we'll see everyone next time. And thank you for coming.
Pee time.
Goodbye.